Hi, and welcome back to the Sales Rewired podcast. In this episode, Mark and I will be discussing the importance of qualification and the 4 key questions to ask so that you focus your resources on the opportunities that you're most likely to win. So do listen, enjoy, and let us know what you think.
So this week, I thought it'd be useful to talk about a huge thing in sales that I just find so many people get this wrong or not right enough, and I think there's some misunderstandings around it. But qualification is what we're going to talk about today. And I just by way of introduction for this, I've got to say, I don't know about you with your clients over the years, but the number of clients that have come to me and said, what we most need help with is closing. We need our people to know how to close. I'm told that one more often by a long way than anything else. And I always laugh because I think they want the magic wand. Can you help us close all these deals? And I always say to them, I think that's a bit like a football player saying, I just need to know how to score goals. Because it's everything that comes before the scoring of the goal, isn't it? It's the setup and all of that matters the most. And I found out, I remember years ago, working with a company, we did an assessment. There was a lot of people we worked with, and a load of them in the assessment had what we refer to as pipeline bloat. They had a load of opportunities stuck in their pipeline that just weren't being closed. And of course, we worked out that it wasn't a closing problem. It was surely a qualification problem. They were letting leads and deals enter their pipeline, living on hope or living on hopium, as I've heard people say in the past, as if it's a drug, and the deals just weren't the right fit. And they weren't going to close. It's like they're almost, some of them almost just dead deals. That's not in the right place. So we'll talk about how to fix that today. What are your thoughts on qualification and why is it so important?
Similar, I think the bottlenecks seem to be at the front end of the sales process. How do we get leads in the first place? A bit of desperation can creep in, can't it? That you add things to the top of your pipeline because you need to fill your pipeline, or you end up with a really long tail of deals that have been sat in that pipeline for a long time and that you don't want to shift because of the amount of time you've invested in them.
Yes.
So going back to, why is it so important? One reason is just the time that it takes, not just you as a salesperson, but often all the support people that you need to help as well, and the time that's invested by them, solution architects, bid managers if you're in that type of organization, and marketing, all the support resources that are also then involved in the deal. So it's an investment in the time and the cost. Now, stats that I've seen is it's anything between 5 to 10% of the deal value, the sale value, that is the cost of managing a sale. That can be that could be a lot of money that's then sunk into a deal if it's not going anywhere. Resources that could be better spent on deals that are more likely to win. Right. So there's the cost of resource. But then there's also some stats that I saw. There's a lot of reports that have been done on this, as you can imagine, that, for example, deals that have been well qualified to fit your ICP, your ideal client profile, that they'll close twice as quick, so they'll close quicker if they're a good fit. The deal values, the actual contract value of a deal that's qualified to fit your ideal client is 30-40% larger than your non-ICP fit deals.
Yes, good, yeah.
And then your win rates go up. Average win rates in B2B is about 20% as an average. Deals that fit your ICP have between 30 and 40% win rates.
Yeah.
That's quite a good reason to qualify your ICP to start with. So I think we want to talk about the kind of top 5, however many tips on qualification. Yeah. So my first one would always be, does it fit your ideal client?
Yes. I'm always saying fit and value. Get those two going and keep improving them, and you've just nailed it in the first one. So sorry to cut across you. Fit.
Yeah, no, I think that's so ICP fit and rates go up. The average deal value goes up, and then once you actually win a customer that does fit who you are best able to provide services to, the retention rate is again 30-40% higher than clients that you've somehow sort of crowbarred almost into your pipeline and into your organization, and they don't stick around. So again, that ICP fit is so important. And one of the challenges that I see, particularly with startups and SMEs, is that it's quite hard to define that ICP. And when you start off, you can't afford not to go after certain deals. But the problem is that it will feel good to start with, but you will then lose out to another organization who has better references, maybe understands that the customer's industry a bit better, and the proposition is tweaked for that specific sector. So you will lose out. You might have a better product, but from a customer perspective, they feel more comfortable with an organization, with the salespeople, the setup, the case studies that fit their own requirement and their own industry.
It's amazing, isn't it? This is a lesson we surely learned when we were 2 years old and we were putting those little wooden blocks into the shapes, the triangular one goes in there. And the thing is if you've got the triangular peg and you're trying to get it, say, into the square slot, right, you're going to have a very hard time.
Yeah.
And you're going to start crying as a 2-year-old. Yeah. It won't go in. Yeah. This is what people are doing, and I've said this to professionals who laugh and realise that that's what's going on. Turns out it's very hard to get a square peg into a round hole. Turns out it's much easier and more fun to get the square peg into the square hole.
Yeah, well, as you say, it's quicker, it's less effort, and you get less stress of a hammer having to bash away at it. Yeah,
it starts with the realisation. I think it's really important. Is we are not for everyone, and I think people need to understand, who are we for? Who are we as a business? And who are me and my team, or whatever level you want to play at? Yeah. Who are we for? Who were we almost born for or made for? And what problems were we born to solve? And also, which clients or customers are for us? And that needs a conversation around a table for people to get very clear for. And who could we send elsewhere? And it's a sorting, it's a game of sorting. I've said to a load of people, in this day and age, I think more than ever before, to be really good at sales, you don't need, there's a lot of skills or old school skills you might not need, but one skill you do need is you need to become a professional sorterer, I say to them. So you're sorting things out. That goes there, that goes there, that goes there, that goes there. And if you do that well and consistently and have a framework or a means to do it, it goes a long way.
It's like the Harry Potter, the sorting people in the right kind of houses. And I guess now we've got AI that can be that magician, the sorcerer, that gives you that insight and is able to map prospects with your proposition and are they a good fit for you?
Yes.
And that point you made, Mark, about knowing who isn't a good fit, that's also something that I think organisations struggle with or don't think about. No. It's all about what are the firmographics, what are the sectors we should be going after, and they don't consider, well, actually, we're going to discount and not have this type of organisation, either because they haven't been a good fit before, or because we know there's other competition that can provide a better, more differentiated service than maybe we can. So that being able to say no is good as well.
And I've seen it so many times. I go into organisations and they say, we need you, Mark, to train our salespeople up to sell better, right? That's what they think the problem is. And I go in and I look at the opportunities in their pipeline that have just come from anywhere, all different shapes and sizes. And it's like, your team don't need training on how to get the square peg into the round hole better. There's not some magic technique that's going to do that. What you need to do, if the hole is round, you need to start getting round pegs into your pipeline. Let's get real on this. It's all the stuff you do earlier.
And going back to the point you started with, Mark, about closing deals and saying no at the right sort of time, that there was another stat that I read that if the deals that go beyond your normal cycle time, if they go beyond that by more than 50%, you've got a 60% less chance of it closing. It will just wither away. Again, AI is so powerful here at managing forecasting and understanding where these cut-off points are and flagging them. So that's, for me, it was a really useful flinch test. Tracking what's your average sales cycle for a deal. Once it gets more than 20, 30, 40%, you should be flagging that and and really pushing back, should we carry on investing any more?
Couldn't agree more. As you said, that the cost of doing business, the cost of moving, an ill-fitting opportunity through your pipeline could be prolific. Sometimes it doesn't end. It can be stuck in there for months, and people are just literally trying to flog a dead horse, as it were. And they're just begging for techniques to help them do it. Those opportunities are dead.
So the first one, it sounds very similar. In fact, it sounds the same. Get your target for qualification, make sure that it fits your ICP. So the hygiene factor is checking that it does actually fit the territory that you're assigned to. Obvious point, but sometimes there's grey areas around the edges. Did you have any
I'll tell you what, first of all of mine fit under the word fit, because they're to do with fit. But I actually have used the word fit for something else that we'll look at later on. This is the last one that I'll share, because there's a specific kind of fit. Mine are in no particular order. The first one on my list here is just simply, are we able to deliver on this? Can we do what we're promising? And I partly say this because in most of my client organisations where I'm working with engineers and non-salespeople as well as the salespeople, often, of course, the salespeople make a promise about something the engineers can do, and then the engineers say, no, we can't do that. And then there's this big internal mess while the client's just watching, going, what's going on? Even worse if it comes out in conversations live in front of the client. But this clarity on this is one for us or it isn't one for us. It kind of ties in with what you've just said.
Yes.
That's one.
Secondly, I'll think of qualification as a continuous process. So you want to keep coming back to whatever your qualification criteria are, and that even starts when if you have a meeting with someone. Can I just check that you still got 60 minutes or whatever it is for the meeting, for the call, just to keep that idea in your customer's mind that yes, you will be checking things as you go along for both benefits, both for yourself and for your customer. And that point you made about we're not for everyone, it's asking the question to your prospect to say, are you comfortable telling me no if at some stage you don't think we're the right fit, and I'll do the same as well. If I don't think we're the right fit, I'll let you know.
And send them to be helpful and say you might be better off going this way, and they will remember that you were helpful, value adding in the moment. Good and honest, save them time and effort.
And you're not desperate. You're not desperate for the deal. If you don't think it's right, then you will let them know. So I think that point about it being a continuous process is an important one.
Can I throw one thing in on that? Sorry, Alex. Just this supports what you've just said, and I love sharing this with my clients because I've used it for years. And I can't even remember where this either came from or whether I thought it up or whatever. I certainly turned it into my own way of explaining, which I'll do now. This is what I say to my clients, right? On repeat, this backs your continuous processing. On repeat, imagine on the inside of your left eyelid, you've got the question tattooed, should we be talking, right? Should we be talking? So that's your left eyelid. You see that all the time. And that's your radar in life when you're in sales. And I mean, in your working hours, but also at weekends, you're having a barbecue around someone's house, you meet someone. Should we be talking about, what I do? And then, no surprises, on your right eyelid, tattooed on the inside of it is, should we keep talking? And all you've got to do, and this completely, overlaps with the idea of a continuous qualification, fit and value on repeat. Should we be talking? Should we keep talking? And you keep turning over pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, gathering the intel that increases the fit and the value up until the point where you either qualify them out, we should no longer be talking, it doesn't make sense anymore, or we should keep talking all the way to the deal being done. You get what I mean?
So I'm just, as you were just saying that, I was thinking, so you got that tattooed on the inside of your eyelids. I'm thinking, do you have it also on the outside? So as you blink, the customers also seeing.
Correct.
So they start wandering off. You kind of know that, you've been qualified out by that. But actually, it's the point that both of you need to be qualifying all the time.
It's a mutual thing, and they should be. And I've never been afraid to sometimes share the secrets with my buyers like that. Hey, what we found quite useful is if we both work out whether we should be talking or not, and whether we should both keep talking or not. And I often say to them, Alex, typically it can take 5 minutes of chit chat to work out whether we should keep talking further or not. And if we both agree to, then onward we go. If we don't, we exit gracefully. I often say that sort of thing to clients.
Exactly. So I've got 4 high-level qualification questions, and there's a process behind each of them that you and I both have programs to help SMEs in particular to understand and put those in place. So my first one is the deal going to happen? So that's things like, what is their pain point? What's their challenge? Is it big enough and important enough for them to actually do something about it? Or is it just a relatively minor irritation that, yes, it's annoying, but not enough to do anything about? So will it happen is, for me, the first point of qualification. And there's a lot of different techniques, systems that can challenge that. What's the real value? What is the challenge? And there's 4 levels of challenge that a customer might have. Is the value of fixing it worth it? Have they got somebody who actually is personally responsible, feels pain by the challenge, and is therefore a champion for you?
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard of Perry Marshall. I used to study a lot of his stuff way back, but I love his version of this. He says that the question that kind of ramps the tension up in what you've just said is, who's got the bleeding neck? It sounds gross, it's a bit of a gross visual, but then it's memorable. So, and I often say to clients, it sounds a bit gross, but let's picture this. Have they got a bleeding neck, and can you stop the blood flow? Do you know what I mean? And when you're talking to someone where you can identify that bleeding neck, you're having a very, high tension, useful conversation.
Yeah. So I find a lot of salespeople will clearly know what the symptom is. There's blood. Then they will look at what the business impact might be, because that is the second tier of obviousness, and it might be in a business environment, the costs are high, or there's a bottleneck somewhere, there's not revenue coming in that there should be. What's the business impact of whatever the challenge is? But the third level, and salespeople don't always drive down to this, is exactly the point you're making. Whose neck is it that is bleeding? So what's the personal impact? Who's the key person who is impacted by this? And it might be, is their job at risk if this thing doesn't get sorted? Do they miss out on a promotion? Do they have more stress in their job? So what's the personal impact? And then the fourth level is, what's the threat to the business? Is there some existential threat to the business if this doesn't get fixed? And the bleeding neck is a graphic example of, if it doesn't get fixed, what might happen. So you're kind of building up this picture, and again, there's methodologies that you and I go through to help salespeople, businesses understand how to tease out what these impacts are, and then put a cost against it as well.
Alex, they're massive points, and I almost think the personal one you mentioned, I don't think we've even done it justice, because it is huge. So I've done a lot of going along with clients to certain sales meetings and observing them and so on. And of course, there's this tendency for so many people to lean onto the logic, or at best, to lean onto the commercial way of buying, right? So they can talk on behalf of the business and the benefits to the customer's business, fine. And maybe they go as far as aligning it with the strategic objectives of their customer's business, brilliant. But I just don't see them do what you just said. Draw it to the personal impact on that individual. And I always make a point of doing it. So if I talk about impact on the business, I often draw it back and say, I get it. Let's look at the short, medium and long-term impact. I get it. What about the impact on you, in your role, in your career? And I said on last week's one about, what are you going to say to your boss? If this goes this way, what are you going to say to your boss? You're going to celebrate, it'll be amazing, you'll look great and all of that. But if it goes this way, what are you going to say to your boss, and how likely is that to happen? And we have a good old conversation, and what can you put in place so that it doesn't happen? Let's work this one through. And then, of course, the minute you're having that level of conversation, you're tapping right into their human emotions, because they're no longer talking so much on behalf of the business. They're protecting themselves and their status and reputation. These are massive buying drivers that so many people just overlook.
Exactly right. And to get those personal reasons out, that's not done on a 5-minute phone call the first time you meet someone. They'll come through them trusting you enough to share some of this, maybe from those kind of coffee, the water machine, the water fountain moments. Just going out for a drink or a meal with a customer prospect, they have to trust you enough. And I think building that, again, obviously takes time and a certain way of interacting.
Yes.
Certain questions, that how you have the right open questions that tease this information out. It's a critical part of the whole sales process, and can be really hard for people maybe not used to a sales environment to start to build that rapport.
Correct. If they are not a, let's say, a people person, or if they don't tend to have the level of empathy needed to develop that rapport and that trust and honesty and integrity and all of that, they are going to struggle to get those particular personal answers from the buyer. And yet, we've got to remember that if the next person, the next alternative choice for that buyer, i.e. your competition, is able to do it better than you, then they potentially have a huge edge.
People or start off on the emotional side, the emotions as a driver, then they justify through logic, which is the business case part. But then I think it comes back to the ability to fix whatever you can fix. Yes. It's the personal driver that comes back right at the end.
Yeah. Well, look,
often wrapped up in risk.
Yeah, no, exactly. Logic makes us think, emotion makes us act. And if you can't tap into that emotion efficiently, don't be surprised when they're not taking action. And again, I speak, I mean, this is something that does apply to everyone in sales anyway. People fall too back on their own cherry-picked logic and don't understand why the customer is not sharing their same cherry-picked logic. That goes on a lot. Do you know what I mean? But particularly in my specialist area, I am working with a lot of engineers and so on, and they don't half lean on the logic in front of them way too much.
Yes.
And it's a big stretch on trying to get them to understand and develop their empathy further. You know, and if you're going to use logic, you're almost better off using the buyer's logic for them to think it through and work it out. And that takes some skill, but there are frameworks and things that I provide to my clients to help them increase the chances that they can do this.
Yes, yeah. So we've got the ICP. We're recognising it's a continuous process, the qualification. We're thinking then, is this deal going to happen? Is the pain point there? What's the cost if they don't do anything? Then the next question might be, do we want to win this deal? Is it the kind of customer that we want to deal with? Is it a good fit for our proposition? Do we have to make a lot of changes that we don't want to do yet? And so that's do we want to win it? Frameworks like Scotsman, for example, that I talk my customers through are really helpful in that, the right sort of size, the right sort of scope. Then the fourth one that I would look at, and it'd be good to get your thoughts, Mark, is the question, can we win it? And this is all about, have we got the relationships in the right places? Champions, stakeholders, is a good fit like that? Have we got enough of a differentiated proposition to win this against the competition? That would be my next question from a qualification perspective, Mark. You know, yes, feels a good fit, but can we win it?
I like it. You've mentioned, again, a lot of these overlap a lot. So can we win it? And I agree, if you've got the right sort of process, and if you're going to the level of scoring it up and so on, which, you know, depending on the field you're in and so on, I would certainly encourage you bring something like that in. But you mentioned the uniqueness factor there, and I think this is, again, it's one that I don't see it done well enough or as far as it should be done. So my take on the uniqueness side, because I often say to people selling, you know, what's your USP? And they struggle with that, by the way, most of the time. Most companies really struggle. They say, well, if we're honest, we're very much the same as those guys down the road. But the question I want to know is, how does the buyer uniquely see your value? And I choose those words specifically. How does the buyer? Because what I'm prodding for is, have you heard it from the horse's mouth? Not what do you think is our unique angle? What does the buyer think? You know, what have you done to plant seeds in their mind and help them understand the unique, relevant value to them right now? And most people can't answer that question, because I'm pushing them, Alex. I'm provoking to get to the truth, and it's like you haven't had that conversation with them, have you?
Exactly. And the reason you do that is you want them to say in their own words what they think is the value. Because when you're not in the room, what are they saying about you?
Right, yeah, good. Yeah.
And you'll hear that by asking them the question, what is it that you think differentiates us, and what's the value that we bring to fix these problems that we've gone through? Yes. So I 100% agree. Getting them to articulate that back. Do they use the same words that you've been using, or have they got a completely different perspective?
Yeah.
And seeding the words and those benefits is a critical part of the sales process as well. That's your responsibility. But it's what they say when you're not there is the key.
Brilliant. We've got to remember, we talked last week about all my previous work I used to do in learning. and accelerated learning. That's how I started out years ago. And one principle to make your learning effective is the show you know principle. I used to say to people, you haven't learned it until you've absolutely proven that you've learned it. And I see people in business making the mistake all the time. They're about to do a presentation and then they find out live in the presentation that you haven't learned your stuff and now you look a fool in front of everyone. And this whole show you know thing is such an important feedback loop to have the confidence and to have the right reality in front of you to be able to actually do something. Do you get what I mean? And so I emphasize this again because people selling do have, if I ask about your unique value, they do have a tendency to tell me what they think their unique value is, but that they're still holding the ball. I want to hear it from the person who's caught the ball. I want to hear what, because that's what makes the sale. It's the buyer's decision. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to hear it from the horse's mouth. And I've always said, like, value is in the eye of the beholder. Value is what the customer says it is. It's not what you say it is. It's not what you pitched at them. That is not value either. That's potential value, but it's how they've caught that ball, the buyer, and what they think is what's going to determine whether the sale goes ahead or not. And we need to get that feedback. So I often say, I say to buyers, look, it's been a great chat, and I can see there's a whole load of areas here where we think we can make some impact. Brilliant. Before we wrap up, though, can I just hear it from you? Like, where do you see the most value in what we've just talked about, and what else? And then, of course, they're just selling to themselves then, because they say, well, I see the values here, and I see it's here, and I see it's here. Brilliant. And I try to get them to quantify it a little bit. I'm hearing it from the horse's mouth. I might even have the conversation, in terms of, I know you're talking to some other people, but from the unique angle as well, where do you see the unique value in working with me? And they will answer. And it's like, good. Now I've done my qualification process properly. They've caught the ball. They've shown that they know. Yeah. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, the question I like is, how do you think once this is in place, how will you feel? How will the business be benefited? So it's back to the emotion, how will individuals feel about the situation, the process, whatever it is that you're completing once it's in place. Certainly in B2B sales, the more complex ones, you're going to have 5, 6, 7 different stakeholders who will all have a different impression. Some may not have spoken to you directly, so they'll have heard it maybe second, third hand. So trying to get around all those stakeholders, which is why stakeholder mapping that we help our clients do, is so important to know what are the messages and the benefits that all the different people in that influence and decision-making group, what are they all hearing? What do they think the benefits are going to be, and what do they want them to be? So having a broader spectrum of opinion is critical.
Absolutely. See, the more we talk about this, you realise it's very easy to say qualification. Have you qualified?
Yes,
it's such an important thing to get right. We're sharing a lot of ideas here. There's more to share as well. Yeah. The real challenge I've noticed with clients, though, is okay, we've got all these ideas on how to qualify, but what works for us and our buyers most efficiently right now, and how can we put that into a framework that's really useful? And I think that's the challenge. That's what me and you can help bring to clients to get that tool.
Yes. Yeah. So we've talked about these 4 key questions. Is the deal going to happen? Can we win it? Do we want to win it? Then what's the strategy for winning that deal? Are we going to go direct head to head? Are we going to redefine what we think the problem is, because it seems to have been defined by what the competition feel the solution should be? Do we need to push back against that? Do we need to partner with someone? Do we need to change the way that we are fronting the proposition to the customer? Is there somebody else who's better able to do that? Do we need to partner with somebody who adds value because they can subcontract into us some services that we aren't able to do as well as they can, and suddenly as a consortium it's a better proposition? So there's different strategies that come from understanding what the best fit solution is for the customer. So that would be my 4th area. What's the way we should tackle this particular project and solution?
And does that suit how we also want to engage this buyer? Again, it's about getting that constant fit right. I'm big on the idea of helping buyers buy in the way that they want to buy, but I also qualify that. I don't mean that you just fully adapt to every single buyer. What I mean is that you get your ICP right, first of all, and you bake it in. It's like that I'm for you, and also you tend to want to buy in this way, and we can adapt within this range to help you buy in the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think when you start to dig into the details of now putting this into practice, there's 10, 15 different frameworks that help this qualification. I've mentioned Scotsman, I've mentioned MedPick, another one, Medic, BANT, CHAMP, SPICE. There's all these different metrics which you and I know. And they all bring something to this whole end-to-end qualification process, if you know when and where to use them. And that's the kind of support and expertise I think that we bring, knowing when to use these at different stages of the process as well.
That's right. And like anything, you go back to when you learn maths at school or whatever. If you had a good maths teacher, they would put the importance of understanding the principles behind it first, which is partly why we're having this conversation, because once you get the importance of these principles, then you'll see how they fit into all these different tools.
Yes.
I think that's an important point to make, that people don't just have a tool that they blindly use without kind of understanding how it works.
Yes, yeah. And they do have their uses, because you can then check off, is the challenge there? Is it a customer priority? Do we know who the authority is? Have they got a budget? So these are the questions that you do want to ask at different stages. A lot of this qualification has traditionally been quite subjective. And as a salesperson, when you get asked by your manager, do you know who the decision maker is? And you may say, yes, it's Anne or it's Jim or whoever that might be. And nobody's going to push back on you because they don't know that account as well as you do. But I'm thinking now with AI engaged and looking at these signals in a much more objective way, the qualification process can be made more accurate. There's certainly more insight, objective insight that can be provided to salespeople, to sales managers during that process.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like a lot of people, I'm thinking about where AI is going and all of that. And I imagine that we will reach a point in time, and I suspect it's way sooner than we think, where business A, right, AI knows that business A out there is suffering a problem, that business B is absolutely the right business to solve business A's problem. And I have a feeling that it's collective global intel will say, I said about, should we be talking? Should we keep talking? AI will be like, these should be talking. And then, of course, take it a level further. AI will contact AI there, and they'll have the conversation and work out the value and say, right, we need to be trading here. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
I think that time will come, but if we can do anything that contributes towards that objectively, I think we're doing the right thing. And I agree. I use Claude and ChatGPT to get as many of these kind of objective, and it's important to verify and make sure it's not hallucinating and all of that, but get these objective matchups. It's all helping. But can I also just say though about the subjective side? Because you're right, there's this tendency to go on the objective side. But remember I said earlier that logic makes us think and emotion makes us act. And I wouldn't underestimate the importance of subjective qualification too. Because for right or wrong, if your buyer is feeling frustration or hassle or risk, and it might not be objectively proven, but if they're feeling it, you've got a button or a lever there to work with. Do you know what I mean? And it might be completely subjective, but I think it's got its place as well.
Yeah. I completely agree. And when you think of all the qualification process, yes, they've got a need, there's a cost of inaction, you've got your stakeholders engaged, and then the customer goes into a bit of a purdah and they make their own evaluation internally. And there's two factors, I think, that is really where the decisions are made. One is, do they trust that you'll deliver the benefits that you've said that you will and what they're expecting? Are there actually costs to them in getting those benefits delivered? They may downplay the benefits they think they're going to get from you because they're not quite sure if it's going to be delivered or not. So suddenly all these benefits think is going to happen is not as big as you maybe have thought. Risk is a big change at the end. And the second thing, and this comes to your point about The subjective bit is what I call the X factor. Sometimes these things come in right at the end. So as an example, I've had a customer who provided services that my company could take, and they wanted to be on our preferred supplier list as well. And we found out about a month later, we won the contract, and then we found out that they were actually on the process of being taken over, and they wanted to be on the supplier list because that then gave extra value to them as a business. So these requirements can happen that are subjective rather than picked up through,
well said.
through objective criteria.
Yeah, well, with complex sales, it's complex, right? So it's a ridiculous thing to say, but these things they're never quite what they seem. There's more going on. Not everyone's sharing everything with you. We've talked before about getting the trust such that you increase the chances that they will share reality with you. But then also, reality is questionable anyway, because some people think something that's actually not true either. So that's where maybe the subjective and a bit of error comes into it, and it's why it's not a black and white thing. Sales, it's probabilistic, and we've got to try and load the dice, maximise that win-win.
So my other point would be, how do you formalise this? What's the governance process? Certainly with complex deals, as the salesperson having to present maybe to a committee, a board, who is looking to either sign on the deal, which means you get the resources that you may need to continue it, or say no, we want to spend your time somewhere else. So that works for larger organisations, enterprise deals maybe, but even as an SME, who's going to say yes or no to continuing on a deal? So is the governance behind it? How would you do that?
And we haven't mentioned, until you just said it there, the decision maker, who is the person who can say yes.
Yes, exactly.
That's got to be in your qualification process. Is, are we talking to the person who can say yes? And a lot of, I remember what I was going to say earlier. Now, a lot of people, I think, can even be a bit confused or deluded about that. I once had a buyer who insisted and believed they were the decision maker and they could sign this off, only to discover that they couldn't. That it had to go up another, and they were so embarrassed because they thought it could, and you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's why I say people can get it wrong, but we need to find that person who has the power to say yes. Everyone can say no, and nearly everyone will say no in order to protect themselves if they can get away with it. Usually only a few people say yes.
I was thinking more about people in your own organisation. If you're qualifying, who says yes, you can carry on, and no, we're not going to have this resource. So it's both sides. Who's the decision maker on the customer side, and who in your own business is providing that objective or subjective yes or no. And then the other one that may be worth briefly talking about is there's benefits to the customer, because the whole procurement process is time intensive.
Yes.
People are asking questions and wanting time with you, and so you don't want time wasters from a procurement perspective. So if you're helping your suppliers or potential suppliers in qualifying whether they should be spending more time with you or not, I think that helps customers as well, so that they're only then spending their time with maybe the 3 or 4 most likely to win and benefit.
100%. I think framing it up to them as well, along the lines of, look, I've got a few questions. It's really important that we, if we're going to proceed with this, that we get it right. And I want to be, maximise the value to you and see if we can, sort of create this together. It'll take about 30 minutes just to start off with, but I've got a few questions that are really important to test that fit, so that it makes sense for us both. Or are you happy to go through them, or just some form of framing that invites them to play that game with you?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to be naive about it. There will always be, certainly in procurement, who kind of want more suppliers.
Yes.
But you don't want to be that benchmark if you're not going to have a chance of winning it. So you want to play that right. But again, from a customer perspective, having a few well-qualified, capable of winning suppliers has to be a benefit than spending time with suppliers that are never going to win. In government circles, you have a PQQ, a pre-qualification questionnaire. So the suppliers pre-qualify with certain criteria that they have to be compliant with before they get to the formal stage. And that may be something that is benefit in the commercial world as well.
They all point towards the same thing, don't they? That establishing the fit and the value, and should we be talking? Should we keep talking? Does it make sense for these two parties to do business and to exchange?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what it all boils down to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I don't think we have mentioned, and it's such an obvious one, but I'm not sure we actually mentioned it, is just, have they got the budget? Have you tested for that? And I just wouldn't want people to overlook that. Often it can be cited as a reason that something doesn't go ahead, and you kind of want to find out sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. I mean, all the qualification frameworks, your BANT, which is about budget, authority, need, timescales. So the budget is then kind of taken over by priority. So for me, that would be an important one. Is this really a customer priority? Is it our priority problem to solve?
It's so worth digging around, isn't it? It's so, because otherwise it comes back to bite you later, and you realise. And I've walked into that a few times in the past. It's why it's important to stick to your process. Don't let the customer go until you've asked all your important questions. Yeah. It's true. And priorities change as well, which is another reason why we want to move the deal forward efficiently, because of course, especially in this day and age, things change so fast. As part of my own qualification process, I try to just work with buyers who want immediacy, who want something soon, within a matter of weeks. And if they say to me, "Oh, we don't need it for a few months," to me that's a red flag in my world. Right? In my world, we don't want it for a few months. Like a red flag. I'm not going to invest so much in you if I've got another opportunity over here that wants it in 2 weeks.
Yes.
It's about, is the buyer in that buying window? Are they ready?
Back to your very first point about finding it difficult to close, and you have customers that say, "We don't need it now, and we're not quite ready yet." You happen to build what's the cost of not doing it then? So if you're waiting another 4 months, whatever the benefit is that you think you're going to get, maybe you're saving $2,000 a month or whatever it might be. So you're losing out on that by pushing it back. That point about knowing why a customer is going to do it and what they're missing out on.
Perfect.
Building that up front is
our world. I'm big on that. If a client tells me that they've got a problem in their sales function, and they're either leaving money on the table, opportunity cost, whatever, if I can help them establish what they're missing out on, whether weekly, monthly, whatever, and look at that gap, and then if I have the conversation, so when do you want to get moving on fixing this leak, as it were? There's a leak in your bucket. When do you want to get moving? And if they say, "Oh, not for 3 months," I'll do the maths for them and say, "You've just told me." And in the end, it's like, why not just get cracking? If it really is costing you, and it's not like sellotaping over a hole in a bucket. It takes a while to steer the ship in sales. People need to shift their mindset slightly and develop maybe some new skills and processes. So let's just get cracking if it really is a cost.
Yeah, and those 4 levels of pain, we're losing money is the symptom. We've lost a sale. The business impact that's $5,000 that we've lost. And then the personal impact is, well, maybe a salesperson isn't making target, maybe the sales manager's not making target. But the fourth tier, what's the impact to the business at large? Well, if you're not making that money, you're not able to invest in another salesperson or new products, services. So your business isn't then growing, and it's not developing, it's not staying competitive. So you can see a thread of what just seems to be, we've lost a sale. There's impacts, and all the way down to you're not able to now invest in new services that you're trying to deliver.
That's right. It's about opening their eyes, isn't it? I think systematically opening their eyes. I think you don't have to be systematic. So I've heard people say, so long as you cover all bases when you're selling, it kind of doesn't always matter what order you do it in. I'm not so sure. And maybe it's the people I work with who like to be quite methodical anyway. But I believe a decent, well-structured, value-building conversation is worth learning and rolling out. And you can see it in the buyer. You're building value. You can see them getting more animated as you move through. Do you know what I mean? It's putting it all together. Yeah. The only extra one on my list, and the extra one is huge, is what I said earlier at the start. I said I call this bit fit, right? So all the other stuff, budget, am I talking to the person who can say yes, timings, they are in most of the qualification models we've spoken of, and generically, yes, you need all of those. But then there's the client and buyer specific criteria that you need to establish, and this is unique to every unique business. that you need to establish to really align to your ICP, right, to your ideal buyers. And these need to go in your qualification process. And I don't know whether it's 3 questions or 10 questions. It all depends on what you're doing. But your salespeople need to go through them with your buyer. Just in terms of putting it in the most basic form possible. In my own world, we spoke last week, Alex, where I very quickly say to potential buyers, the people you want me to work with, are they hungry to learn? Are they willing to challenge themselves and learn? And I say to them, because if they're not, I let them know, you're out. Like, there's no point in us doing business together. You will waste your money. And I let them know the importance of us having that conversation and working out. And often they'll say, maybe 8% of the team are. We know there's a couple that aren't. And then that helps, because it's like, well, let's not start with those reluctant people. Let's start.
You mean this is on the customer side?
Correct.
Yes.
So it's part of my qualification, it's part of my unique qualification process. It's relevant to my world, so I can find the ideal customers. I don't want to work with those customers that don't want to learn. And it's why back in the day, some time back, most of my clients were big corporates. And I was targeting them because I knew, they had the badge investors in learning. I knew that learning was massive for them. Do you know what I mean? And so they're going to go ahead. Whereas at the time, I was coming across certain SMEs who weren't behind the learning idea in the same way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I completely. So I use what I call the change matrix. And what I mean by that is, firstly, is the customer capable of change? When you're selling change. Whatever we're selling, there's a change involved. Do they have the resources which they will need to put that in place? Maybe it's training, maybe it's champions that will push through whatever that change is needed. Is the mindset there? And if they're not confident of doing that, then are they open to being coached and helped to do that? Do they recognize they need to change, but they're very confident they can do it all themselves? They don't need help. So as salespeople, whatever we're selling, we need to be testing this. Is the motivation high enough to make them want to change? But then are they also at the stage where they're either not overconfident that they can do it themselves, or are they so worried and unconfident that that even with a bit of help, they don't think they can do it? Because those kind of deals aren't going to go anywhere, because they'll just stay where they are, because they're frozen by fear, concern that they won't get the benefits that they expect, and they'd rather just stay where they are. So qualifying that propensity to change is critical.
And the cooperation and collaboration required in order for us to partner and achieve this together. So I say to everyone, again, in my analogies and metaphors and all that, but I say this is like lifting a heavy table, and everyone must lift. Are you willing to lift with me? Because if you're not, and I've had this frank conversation, don't, if you just think you're going to plug me in and I'm going to wave a magic wand and then I can leave, you're joking. This is, again, you've got to roll your sleeves up and put some effort in. Now, are you willing to do that? I am. Are you? You know what I mean?
Yes. And that point about customer commitment needs to be shown all the way through. And for me, that's part of the qualification. That if we need to speak to an exec, because we have an exec that wants to be the sponsor for when the delivery goes live, we need to have a counterpart, and we need to speak to them early. So having access to the people that are the key stakeholders early on in the process, so we can help shape and build those relationships at the senior level, that's really important for us. And if we're not getting it, well, that would also be a reason to feel that maybe this isn't the best fit right at the moment. So qualification of customers' commitment to you is critical point as well.
Yeah, well put. We've proven there's a lot to it, and there's more that we haven't discussed, of course. And I'm big on the idea, I mentioned this to you before, about helping clients. Well, they can use any of the available tools if they're aware of them, great. But I'm keen on helping clients build their own tools as well that are really tailored to how they do business with their ICP customers. And it's, there's a process that I go through with.
Yeah, so we've talked through why qualification is so important, drives up win rates, reduces sales cycle time, and it keeps customers longer. But you're right, Mark, the how you put this in place, the structures, what frameworks to use, when you apply them, the kind of questions to ask at each stage. Those are areas of expertise that we can certainly bring and help clients to put in place so that they can then run their own qualification system, but know that it's based on best practice frameworks, processes and ways of working.
Perfect. And of course, just by getting in touch with us, they will experience our own qualification process anyway, so they can start learning immediately.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear any of our other podcasts, they're available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Mark has more great sales content on his website, helppeoplebuy.com, and I also have more tips and content for B2B sellers on my website, spear-sales.com. Thanks again for listening.